At his funeral, his mistress smirked and whispered, "You were never enough for him." I stayed silent. But when the priest opened the will, her face turned white. "You won't believe what he left me. Where in the world are you watching this from, and what time is it?" Subscribe now, because this story won't just entertain you. It might haunt you. I still remember the day I met him. It wasn't the grand love story they write about. It was messy, complicated, too many pieces I didn't understand at the time. But I loved him, in a way that only someone desperate to be loved could. There's a kind of hunger, you know? A thirst for affection that makes you blind to the cracks, to the way people mold you into what they need, not what you are. I was always told that I wasn't enough. My mother made sure of that. She never meant to hurt me, of course. But when she looked at me, her eyes always said it. "You're not enough." She never told me I was pretty, or that she was proud of me. Those words, those little phrases are precious, aren't they? You hold on to them like a lifeline. But no, for me it was always about being smarter, being more, doing everything right. I was never allowed to be weak, never allowed to rest. The nights I spent studying in my room, pretending that I didn't care, pretending I didn't feel the cold weight of disappointment hanging in the air every time I failed. I loved my mother, but sometimes I hated her too, because all those expectations, they were too much. And then there was him, the man who had so many faces, the one who whispered sweet things into my ear, the one who made me feel seen, like I mattered. But I should have known better. You always know better. It's just that when you're desperate, you don't listen to your gut. You ignore the signs, you shove them into the corners of your mind where they can't hurt you. But they were always there. That voice in my head, telling me I was just a replacement. And I was okay with that. Because being needed, even for a little while, was better than being invisible. And then at his funeral, when his mistress smirked and told me I was never enough for him, it hit me. I stayed silent because there was nothing to say. Not anymore. I had spent so many years of my life chasing his approval, pretending to be someone I wasn't, just to hold on to the scraps he would throw my way. But when the priest opened the will, something inside me shifted. Her face turned white, and in that moment I understood. Everything that had been hidden, all the secrets, all the lies, they were coming to light. The pieces of his life I never knew about were about to become mine. And as I stood there in that cold, silent room, I realized that this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about me. His death, his betrayal, was just the beginning of something much darker, something I wasn't ready for, but something I was going to face, whether I liked it or not. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this thing he left me. But I do know this. My silence wasn't just for show. It wasn't out of weakness. It was a promise. A promise that no matter what happened, no matter how deep the secrets ran, I was going to uncover them. I would face them piece by piece, until there was nothing left to hide. This is just the beginning. I don't know how long I stood there after the priest opened that will. The silence was deafening, but my heart was pounding so loudly I could hardly hear anything else. The room was full of people, his family, my family, the friends who pretended to care. But all I could focus on was her. The mistress. The woman he'd kept in the shadows. The woman who never once cared to hide her smugness. The way her lips curved up into a knowing smile, as though she'd been waiting for this moment for years. But when the priest read the part about the will, when he mentioned what he'd left me, her smile evaporated. She went pale, her breath hitching as if something inside her snapped. I didn't know what I expected, but that moment felt like a veil had been lifted from my eyes. Suddenly the entire world seemed blurry, like a picture left out in the rain, fuzzy, distorted, and unreal. The woman who'd been my rival, my shadow in the dark corners of his life, was now trembling, caught off guard. But the thing is, I wasn't surprised. I wasn't shocked. I was numb, because the truth had been there all along, hiding in the spaces between his words, in the silences we shared. I just never wanted to see it. I didn't want to acknowledge how little I had meant to him, and how much more I had meant to him than I ever knew. I thought I was the victim, but now I'm not so sure. As we left the funeral, my mind kept racing. Everything about him, about my life with him, was a lie. I remember the day we met, how I was looking for something, anything to make me feel like I wasn't invisible. I was that girl, the one always trying to get noticed, always living in the shadows of people who never saw me for who I was. He told me I was special. He told me I was the one. And for a while I believed it. I believed that maybe, just maybe, I could finally escape the suffocating grip of my childhood. My mother's harsh expectations, her love wrapped in criticism, always made me feel like I was never enough. I spent so many years trying to make her proud, trying to earn the approval that I thought would make me whole. But it was never enough. And then there was him. He made me feel like I mattered, like I was someone worth loving. But now I see it. He was just another reflection of my own desperation, my need to be seen. That's when I started questioning everything. I went back to the house we shared for so many years, and something felt different. The walls seemed colder now somehow. As I walked through the rooms, everything felt too small, too cramped. I noticed things I hadn't before. The photographs on the walls, his letters tucked away in drawers, the old books he never finished reading. There was a weight in the air that I couldn't shake. It was as if every corner of that house held a secret I wasn't ready to hear. And then I found it, the letter, tucked behind a stack of unopened mail, hidden in the back of his study desk drawer. It was addressed to me, but it wasn't from him. The handwriting was familiar, but I didn't recognize it at first. It was my mother's. My heart sank as I read the first few lines. I know you'll hate me when you read this, but there's something you need to know about your father. My hands shook as I turned the pages, each word pulling me deeper into a world I wasn't prepared for. My father. The man I'd grown up thinking was just a distant memory. A man who'd abandoned us long ago. But he hadn't. He had been there, watching from the sidelines, hidden in the background of my life, pulling the strings without me even knowing. My mother had known all along. The letter was filled with secrets about him, about what had really happened between them, how he'd manipulated her, how he'd used her, how he'd used me. That letter shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. The man I thought I could never forgive, the man I thought I would never understand, was connected to me in ways I couldn't have imagined. I felt like the ground beneath me had given way, and I was falling into a deep, dark pit. There was no escaping it. But what hurt the most wasn't the secrets about my father. It was the fact that I was just another pawn in this twisted game. I was used. I had been used all my life. I was never the victim. I was just as complicit. And I couldn't escape the guilt. Every step I took felt heavier, like I was sinking deeper into quicksand. And then, as if fate had decided it was time to break me, I received the message. A text from an unknown number. You don't know the whole truth yet, but you will. It sent a shiver down my spine, the words echoing in my head long after I read them. I tried to shake it off, but the unease lingered. Who could it be? Who else was involved in this tangled mess? I should have known it wasn't over, but for some reason I thought I was done. I thought I had all the pieces. But now I'm not so sure. The darkness is creeping in, surrounding me, pulling me deeper into a reality I never asked for. And the worst part? I don't know how to stop it. How do you fight something when you don't even know who the enemy is? And that's when I stopped being afraid. It's funny, isn't it? How a person can spend so much of their life being terrified of the truth, only to realize that the truth is the thing that will set them free. But the truth doesn't always feel like freedom. Sometimes it feels like a weight you can't carry or a chain you can't shake off. When I found that letter, when I uncovered my mother's role in the tangled web of lies that had been my life, something inside me shifted. I don't know when it happened exactly, but I started seeing things differently. The world started to feel colder, sharper, like a game I hadn't known I was playing. But now I knew the rules. And I wasn't going to lose. I was done being the victim. I was done with the guilt and the shame. No more pretending I was the innocent one. No more waiting for someone to save me. If anyone was going to get out of this alive, it was going to be me. I started thinking about everything differently. Every conversation, every look, every interaction with those around me felt staged. The people I thought I could trust weren't trustworthy at all. I realized how carefully they had all been playing their parts, each of them moving in the shadows, all of us tangled in the same sick game. My mother, who'd always been the pillar of my life, had known about everything. She knew what he was and she knew what I was becoming. And yet, she kept me in the dark, kept me believing that I had to live up to some impossible standard, some impossible ideal that she herself could never achieve. But why? Was it love? Control? Power? Or was it just a matter of convenience? The way she had sacrificed everything, her integrity, her happiness, her peace of mind, for the illusion of a perfect family. It made me sick. I'd been the pawn in her game all along. And when I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to please her, trying to be what she wanted, I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I didn't give her that satisfaction. I didn't give anyone that satisfaction anymore. I didn't speak to her for days after I found the letter. I couldn't look at her. Not because I hated her, but because I hated myself for being so blind. And then just when I thought I was alone in all of this, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my brother, my estranged, perfect brother. The one who always had everything, the one who never had to fight for anything. The one who I had spent my entire life envying. The one who had always been the golden child. But that golden child wasn't so perfect after all. The message was simple. You need to come to the house. Now. I didn't ask questions. I didn't care about the timing or the reason. I just went. When I walked into that house, the tension hit me like a brick wall. He was there, sitting in his chair, staring at the floor like he was waiting for a judgment. And then he looked up. His eyes were different, hollow, and I saw it finally, the cracks in the perfect facade. He wasn't the person I thought he was. And suddenly, I wasn't the person I thought I was either. You're not going to like this, he said, his voice flat, devoid of the usual arrogance. But you need to know the truth. He handed me a letter, the kind that looked too formal, too clinical to be personal. My hand shook as I opened it, and I read the words that made my stomach drop. It was about our father, the one I'd believed was dead. It turned out he wasn't dead at all. He'd been alive, orchestrating things behind the scenes, pulling strings. But more than that, he had been using my brother to manipulate me, using my brother's trust to get to me. My brother wasn't the golden boy I had always believed him to be. He was a pawn just like me. And the worst part? He knew it. He knew what had been happening all along, and he had let it happen. The realization hit me like a wave, knocking the breath out of me. The people I had trusted, the people I had believed in, had been lying to me my whole life. I had been set up, played. And what's worse, I had been playing along without even knowing it. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I stood there silently, absorbing the weight of the betrayal. Why didn't you tell me? I whispered. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Not anymore. The silence between us stretched on, thick and suffocating, before I turned and walked away. I couldn't stay there. Not with him. Not anymore. But I couldn't leave without one last thing. I knew where the house key was hidden. I knew where the weapon was stashed. I knew the truth about everything. I had all the pieces now. And that's when I felt it, the shift. The change. I wasn't going to be anyone's victim anymore. I wasn't going to hide behind the lies and the silence. I was going to take control. I was going to make them feel what I had felt. And as I walked away from my brother, I knew something had broken inside of me. Something had snapped. I wasn't afraid anymore. I didn't care about the consequences. I didn't care about the people who had betrayed me. Because at that moment I realized something I hadn't known before. I was done being weak. I was done being the girl who cried in the corner. I was the one who held the power now. And they were all going to learn that the hard way. I stood there in front of the house, my breath steady but my heart racing. The weight of what I was about to do felt like it had been building for years, and now finally it was all coming to a head. There was no turning back. I had the upper hand, the power, the pieces I needed to finish what had started with that damn letter. That betrayal that had twisted everything I believed about myself and my family. The walls of this house, this cursed place, had seen everything. Every lie, every act of manipulation, every tear that had fallen in silence. But now it would bear witness to something different. My footsteps echoed in the empty hallway as I walked through the door, the sound of them too loud, too final. This wasn't just about getting revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming everything that had been taken from me, about ending the cycle of lies and pain that had been passed down through generations like a family heirloom. I had to see it through. I had to finish it, even if it meant burning everything to the ground. As I reached the living room, I saw them, my mother, my brother, both of them sitting there like nothing had changed, like they hadn't just shattered my world. My mother's face, always so perfect, so controlled, now looked fragile, like it might crumble under the weight of the truth. My brother, the boy I once envied, the man I now hated, didn't even look up. He knew what was coming. I pulled the letter from my pocket, the same one my brother had handed me, and slammed it onto the table between us. You knew. I said, my voice low but steady, every word dripping with the venom I had spent so long swallowing. You both knew, didn't you? My mother's eyes flickered, the briefest flash of guilt before she masked it with the same practiced composure she had worn for years. I didn't want to hurt you, she whispered, her voice breaking ever so slightly. I thought you'd be better off not knowing. You were so young, and I thought I could protect you. I laughed, but it was hollow, almost a scoff. Protect me, I repeated. By lying? By turning me into a pawn in your game? The air between us was thick with unsaid words, with years of silence, and the walls felt like they were closing in. My brother finally looked up, his face pale, eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Fear, guilt, regret, all mixed into one. I didn't have a choice, he said quietly. I was trying to protect you too. But you don't know what it was like, what she did to me. To both of us. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My brother, the one who had always seemed so untouchable, so perfect, had been just as much a victim as I had. But it didn't make it better. It didn't make what they had done to me any less real. I felt the anger rising in me again, like a fire that had been smoldering inside for too long, waiting for the right moment to ignite. You were never protecting me, I said, my voice now shaking with the weight of everything I had been holding in. You were protecting yourselves. You were covering your tracks, making sure I never knew the truth. And now, my words were cut off by the sharp sound of my phone buzzing in my pocket. I pulled it out, my hands trembling slightly, and saw the message that changed everything. I know what you're doing. I have everything. It's all in the file. It was from a name I hadn't seen in years. Another part of my past that I thought was buried. My father. Alive. And somehow even more dangerous than I had ever imagined. My mind raced as I read the message over and over, trying to make sense of it. He was the mastermind behind all of this. He had orchestrated everything. My mother's manipulation, my brother's betrayal, and even the lies I had told myself for so long. I had been his pawn too, just like everyone else. But I was done being anyone's pawn. I was done being anyone's victim. I turned to face my mother and my brother one last time, and I saw their faces, their hollow expressions. They knew everything. And yet, they had still tried to control me, still tried to keep me in the dark. But now the game had changed. I wasn't playing by their rules anymore. I'm done, I said, my voice steady, cold. You both made your choices. You chose this path, and I'm not walking it with you anymore. My brother stood up, his face desperate. Wait, you don't have to do this. We can fix it, we can fix everything together. But I shook my head, the weight of the moment finally sinking in. No, I said softly, it's too late. I turned away from them then, walking out of the room, the door slamming behind me with a finality that echoed in my ears. As I stepped into the night, I felt something inside of me snap into place. I wasn't the girl who had cried in the corner anymore. I wasn't the one who had been afraid of the truth. I was the one holding the cards now, and everyone else was going to play by my rules. I walked through the streets, my mind already planning, already moving, already calculating the next steps. I wasn't going to let them win. Not after everything. And as the night swallowed me whole, I knew one thing for certain. I was going to burn everything to the ground. Not just for me, but for the girl who had never had a choice. For the girl who had been silenced. For the girl who had been nothing more than a pawn. And as I turned the corner, disappearing into the shadows, I whispered to myself. And that's when I stopped being afraid. And if you stayed this long, you already know this wasn't just a story. This was a warning. Subscribe. And remember me.